The interlocutory appeal for Bartz v. Anthropic is going up to the Ninth Circuit, and the Amicus briefs are flying, and we're not going to go over all of them. Most of them are covering what we've already covered, but this one emphasizes what I think is one of the most important points here, which is what is at stake is nothing less than open source AI itself. All of this is going to determine, none of it's going to kill AI. They're not killing AI. That genie is not going back in the bottle. When all this stuff about the exorbitant penalties and having to pay exorbitant licensing fees to get the training data and stuff like that, what that's all about is whether AI is going to be the exclusive province of big tech, or if smaller players and open source projects are going to be allowed in the field. That's what's really going on here. And this is a point that's being made very well by this amicus brief for the Foundation for American Innovation. And just to remind you, two things are being appealed. One is an idea of fair use that Judge Chabria supported over in Cadre v. Meta, but Judge also went against, which is saying that even if the end use is transformative, the training data itself can still be piracy. And that is a big, fundamental contradiction, no matter how these cases shake out. This is going to be appealed up to the Ninth Circuit, and that's going to be one of the big issues, so they might as well sort it out now. And the other is the class certification, because this is ridiculous, and I've gone over that in a previous video, so I won't rehash it here. But when you have a big diverse class like this, where the class members aren't all the same, it basically becomes impossible to defend yourself against. So, let's see what Tim Huang has to say. This is a 19-pager. Again, we'll use the page numbers at the top of the page because that matches the PDF file. So I'm going to say starting on page 6, if you load up the PDF file and type in 6, this is where you'll go, even though at the bottom of the page is page 1 of the brief. So that's how I'll do this. So they start off telling us a little bit about themselves. The Foundation for American Innovation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Its mission is to develop technology, talent, and ideas that support a better, freer, and more abundant future. And so why have they come in here as an amicus? Well, FAI joins this case because the district court's order, Judge Alsop's order that we went over, erroneously certifies a class sweeping in up to 7 million books, the largest copyright class action in history. That blanket threat would bury young firms under per-use damages and drive away the capital they need. Founders would be forced to pay lawyers before writing code. So yeah, it's like I've said before about people who build competitors to YouTube. When YouTube started, it was just 3 guys in a garage, literally. Now, because of things like all the DMCA crap, you want to start up a video website, you got to start up with this massive legal team. And that hurts the market for competitors and startups. And just assures YouTube's dominance. And it's going to be the same thing here with AI. Over on page 7, he explains, the district court took a snapshot of the pirated works in one moment of time, implied that Anthropic had become a digital book storage company, when they're not. They're an AI company, and like they said in their appeal, that's all they do. So if AI training is transformative, and that makes it fair use, then there's nothing they could possibly do with all of that that isn't fair use, because they don't do anything else. They don't have these big, social media apps like Meta, and they don't do, every damn thing like Google. They are just an AI company. So the judge sua sponte created a class off of this claim, ignored or carved out the true upstream and downstream uses of the storage, then certified said class by making a merits adjudication on fair use. And if you remember, he threw out most of the case because of fair use, except for this part of it, while simultaneously claiming that any fair use defense would be manageable class-wide. Facts point the other way on each step. So a lot of this is going over things we already know. And what I want to focus on, starting over here on the bottom of page 12, is really what makes this amicus brief unique and really what I think is the big important issue in all of this. Because as he says, this threatens investment, open source, and national security. And if you've been following my coverage of this, you realize that's a big concern of mine, is losing the open source AIs and the smaller open source projects that are the lifeblood of how artists and authors and other creatives are using AIs in their workflow. You should be able to make an open source project without having billions of dollars and an enormous legal team. But as he explains, that's exactly what's threatened, and he makes the exact same calculation I did. The certified class contains up to 7 million unique books. At the $150,000 cap per work, theoretical liability exceeds $1 trillion, over 15 times Anthropic's $61.5 billion valuation, and far beyond its resources. And I remind you, they've been losing money every year. They haven't been turning a profit. They're a PBC. They're not this, big corporation or anything. Under the mean statutory award of $23,848, the total would be $166 billion, still much more than their valuation. And under the statutory minimum of $750 with 100% overlap, damages would still be nearly $4 billion. Here, certification becomes a death knell, and we've covered the death knell doctrine before, for it puts considerable pressure on the defendant to settle independent of the merits. That's what people complain about a lot with these cases. They're just so big that firms are forced to settle even though they may be in the right, and people consider that a big part of the corruption of the system. And he says history confirms the point. 78% of certified class actions settled, compared with only 15% of putative class actions that never achieved certification. Another study found that virtually all cases certified as class actions and not dismissed before trial end in settlement. Without similar relief here, the parties will settle in doubt, and payment, untethered to a merits decision, will appear in future suits as de facto strict liability for large-scale text and data mining. If the storage class is allowed to stand, this tacit blessing will invite similar claims against other firms that host training data. Each one will confront the same death knell arithmetic and settle rather than fight a lawsuit that could end the company. And I also pointed out in a previous video how this effectively denies you your right of appeal. Because normally in federal court, you always have the right to appeal to a 3-judge panel of the appropriate circuit, in this case the 9th Circuit. But if there's been a monetary award, you need to put up a certain percentage of that as bond. Well, if they give you $1 trillion judgment, that bond is going to be so big there's no way you can pay it, and then you're effectively denied your appeal. That's what they tried to do to Donald Trump. That's what they did to Alex Jones. Regardless of how you feel about those individuals, doing that could fall down on you if you find yourself in a similar situation where they've piled on all these charges. And this has happened with the DMCA, I'll remind you. They've done this to 7-year-old girls. They did this to grandmothers, piling on so many, in some cases asking for more money than existed on the planet, and getting all of these huge judgments that they can't appeal because they don't have the bond. That is the only way the DMCA has managed to survive. That's how you get corrupt anti-freedom laws like the DMCA to keep going on and keep running roughshod over people. They're trying to do the same thing here with AI. Let's learn the lessons of history. Copyright enforcement will thus migrate from case-specific analysis to de facto strict liability. 3 areas will be hit hardest: venture capital, open source development, and national security. So in venture capital, he starts off talking about the DMCA issue I just mentioned. After the Napster injunction in 2000, media and entertainment funding fell sharply from 10.3% of U.S. venture investment from 1995 to 2000 to 4.5% from 2000 to 2005. Because who's going to invest in that if they can just be shut down by bogus DMCA claims? Remember, the only penalty for filing a bogus DMCA claim is perjury, And out of all of the millions upon millions of false DMCA claims there has not been one single prosecution for perjury among any of them. It might as well not be part of the law. If you're not going to enforce it, then it's not a penalty. And then, after controlling for the bursting of the dot-com bubble, an overwhelmingly negative effect, with one venture capitalist referring to the digital music investment space as a wasteland. Peer-to-peer startups vanished. The threat of massive copyright lawsuits deters venture capitalists and angels from investing in new internet platforms. How did we go from all of these social media startups springing up everywhere? Because remember, they used to say MySpace was the unstoppable monopoly and that these upstarts like Facebook never had a chance. There used to be a churn of that. All of that stopped, and Facebook is still dominant, YouTube is still dominant. Why? This is the reason. This is a big part of the reason. If trillion-dollar copyright classes are endorsed, capital will cluster at a few incumbents rich enough to license every book or self-insure, and challengers will stay out. And it all will be in the hands of big tech. It'll just be Meta and Google that are doing it. And the next people who want to create the next Anthropic are just not going to be able to. Hey, Shane breaking in here in post to remind you of a very important point with the decreasing capital investment in these areas. The purpose of copyright is not to enrich artists. It's not to reward them for their hard work. It's not so they can profit or make sure their work is properly licensed or whatever. The only proper constitutional function of copyrights is to promote the progress of science and the useful arts. Decreasing capital investment means you are not promoting progress. You are inhibiting it. So this is not what copyright is supposed to do. This is the opposite of what copyright is supposed to do. Okay, back to the video. And for similar reasons, that's going to affect open source development. Open source R&D anchors the US AI ecosystem. 63% of businesses rely on open source infrastructure and 60% adopt it for lower costs. Yet, these firms are least able to absorb a looming copyright due diligence tax if U.S. fair use protections erode. Meanwhile, German courts have already permitted copying 6 billion image text pairs for an open corpus. If every training copy here invites bet the company risk, open source will move offshore and the flow of open data will shrink. There'll be fewer open source companies. Those that will have to operate in a foreign country. And it'll be just like the crypto companies were under Joe Biden. Companies that were doing absolutely nothing wrong and were a tremendous benefit to the consumer had to shut down and try to start up somewhere else. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then national security. The Defense Department's Chief Digital and AI Office follows a commercial-first plan because industry builds frontier models faster than classified labs. Because the private sector is always more competent than government. Officials have launched pilots with Anthropic and called large language models mission essential. The National Security Commission on AI warned that the U.S. is not prepared to defend or compete in the AI era and urged regulators to avoid liability rules that freeze investment. If leading vendors face massive settlements, or if new firms cannot raise capital because one suit could end them, defense agencies will be forced to revisit the foreign dependence that plagued microelectronics and 5G. And if you remember about how a lot of that was delayed for so long, and then ended up not being everything it could, and ended up not being as secure as it could, because the cybersecurity of 5G isn't what it could or should have been. Well, the same thing is going to happen here. So concluding over here on the top of page 12, Rule 23 exists to promote efficient, just resolution, not to impose de facto strict liability by fear. The court should therefore halt this death knell certification before its effects spread. Signed, Tim Huang for the Foundation for American Innovation, and hopefully the Ninth Circuit listens. Hopefully they take this and hopefully they put a stay on the lower court, because Judge Alsop is still going full steam ahead, class certification and a December 1st trial date. An exceedingly fast trial period, just 4 months for the largest copyright class action suit ever. And Judge Alsop's undeterred. He's like, yeah, full steam ahead. We're going. Woo, woo, woo. Keep this train a-going. We need to stop this train now. And we need to figure this out. So hopefully the Ninth Circuit will see it that way. And hopefully you'll keep following me, because I am the only YouTuber covering this. In fact, I don't know anywhere on social media, not on X or anywhere else, where you'll find someone covering these as thoroughly as I am, and where you will get the full picture as I've been giving you, as opposed to just the propaganda talking points from the news media, who, remember, are big plaintiffs in these. They are not neutral in this. So if you want there to be some voices other than this, then please like, subscribe, and share these videos everywhere. Add your own voice to the chorus. And above all, keep me doing what I do by going to donate.bogosity.tv. Any kind of donation, big or small, or become a regular supporter, Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Get these videos early and ad-free. We've got the monthly live stream coming up. I'm not exactly sure when. We'll have to set a date, but you can join in on that too. Other benefits as well, so please check those out. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.